Good evening, everyone. So we'll now start with the treaty acknowledgements. The University of Alberta respectfully acknowledges that we're located on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous people, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Ojibwe, Sato, Anishinaabe, Inuits, and many others whose histories, languages, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant community.
Good evening. Good evening. Test, 1, 2, 3, everyone's good? Fantastic, let's try that again, okay? Good evening, everyone. From Dewey's at the University of Alberta, I am Matt Kukan, the Chief Returning Officer of the Students' Union, and I welcome you to the first ever presidential debate between VP External Christian Fotang and former Councillor Haroon Ali. This debate is hosted by the UASU Elections Office at Dewey's. The election office has designed the debate format, 20 questions spanning across 4 major themes. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. Both campaigns have agreed to these rules. For the record, I have decided the topics and the questions in each theme, and none of them have been shared with either side or parties. Please welcome Vice President Christian Fotang and former Councillor Haroon Ali. Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get right into it. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Mr. Ali, you may begin.
Awesome. My name's Haroon Ali. I'm running for Student Union President. Our union has not failed you. The establishment that runs our union has failed you. Our union is a collective of students and they have never failed. You Alberta students are resilient and we are determined in whatever we do. The establishment of the Students' Union has failed you, however. The bureaucracy and inefficiency that plagues our governance has prohibited new student voices from joining. Rather than empowering new student voices, we see the same voices year after year after year, and mainly because of the institutional knowledge that blocks new voices from being able to come in. Institutional knowledge is great, but what we need now is an outsider. In September, I'll be a 4th-year student in my last year of my degree here at U Alberta in my political science. In January, after an 11-month battle with this establishment, I resigned from the Students' Union. I had no intention to come back. Like so many of you, I had lost faith in the establishment. They've lost the plot. And it feels as if we can't do anything to stop them. This is why so many student representatives have left the Students' Union and have resigned from council, have resigned from committees, because they don't have faith anymore. Our elections have 20% turnouts. Our council's nearly half empty. It's time to admit the reality that students have lost faith in the establishment. We need change. We need a fresh voice at the helm. I provide that voice, and I provide a unique perspective on governance due to my in-depth background in political organizing and strategy. When I say we're a union, not a business, I mean it, quite literally. We are legislated to be a union and to represent students. Our primary focus and goal must be to deliver robust advocacy. The establishment, once again, has lost this plot. And now more than ever, we are closer to unseating them and delivering real, tangible change. We have hundreds of students supporting our campaign already, and with your support, I'm confident that we'll be able to deliver, and I'll be the next Student Union President. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start out cliche here, but when I started university, I did not think that I would be standing here having to run to be UASU president. In my African household, convincing my parents that I should be using my Tuesday evenings in 3-hour meetings, they would have said, you should UASU go pick up a book and read. It just wasn't the type of thing I saw myself doing. The first time I decided to run, it was because I saw firsthand the negative impacts that tuition increases had on a close friend. I had 2 options: be annoyed and do nothing about it, or figure out what I could do to help and comfort my friend. So I ran. I ran because I believe that in a province as rich as ours, no one should have cost be a barrier to accessing their education. I was just an eager-eyed kid with a bad haircut wanting to change the system so my friend could afford his education. 2 years into that role, I still hold that same belief for all students that I did for my friend. Over my term, I have been able to achieve measures that support students. But getting to these achievements has not been easy. Burdened by exceptional tuition increases, mental health concerns, rising cost of living, university has been a challenging time for students. But I still believe that progress is possible. I have seen this progress achieved through my time as chair of the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations. I've seen this progress achieved on our campuses. But still, many of you have shared how you don't feel heard or feel that decisions made by your students' union reflect your priorities. Things are disconnected and many feel left out. I recognize that the system is not working for many, and I want to bring my attention back to our campus community and ensure that no one feels left out. That's why I'm running to be your next UASU president. My platform has bold but achievable goals that address the pressures students are facing today. Providing more supports for students in unpaid placements, improving our accommodation systems, better supporting student groups through refining our grants process. But getting there will require trust and input from students, and my skills, leadership ability, and experience makes me the right person to begin that work. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you for that, gentlemen. The first question I have from each candidate tonight is this. Why do you think that you deserve to be the president of the Students' Union, and what makes you believe that you would do a better job than your opponent? Mr. Fotang, you may begin.
So affordability is obviously top of mind for a lot of students right now. Your tuition has gone up by 25 to 79% in certain programs. Cost of living is up. Over my term as VP External, I've been able to achieve elimination of interest on federal student loans, more work hours for international students, more grants and more money being put into the Canada Summer Jobs program. That's what I've been able to achieve externally. Now I want to bring that experience back home and see what we can do to make your experience here affordable on campus, whether it's more affordable prices at Submart, Dewey's, Daily Grind, making sure we can use our purchasing power to get more discounts for you in local businesses in the area, but also promoting and making aware the various avenues for grants and financial supports that you can have in our university would be my priority.
The reason why I decided to run for president again was because when I first stepped on foot on campus, I was a 15-year-old. I was involved in a debate tournament. I was remembering walking around the halls of Humanities Center, thinking of all the possibilities ahead of me. Now, more than ever, what we need is we need someone that has actually lived the experiences of what students are facing right now. I'm a political science student. I live in residence. For me, I have seen the hikes in tuition. I have seen what's called not being able to know if you're able to afford next semester's tuition. More than ever now, what we need something different. We need a voice that is able to capture all of campus. And for me, that's what we have done as a campaign. We have created a platform that has different student voices, that has new student voices, which has been a big priority of mine as non-com chair, is by including new voices into the fold. And for me now, more than ever, what I think people want is, I think people have lost the faith in the establishment. I think by re-electing the establishment time and time after again, for a decade now, we have not seen any change. We have seen candidates come up on the stage every single election, promising different and never delivering different. And then the next candidate comes and criticizes that difference. So more than ever now, we just need something different. That's what I'm promoting. We're a union, not a business. That's where I think my strength comes in.
Yes, there's time to respond.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that because, you talked about re-electing the same candidates, but Haroon, you open your platform and the very first page is 7 items of legacy projects achieved by past and current UASU executives, past student leaders who've seen themselves not being seen or represented on this campus. I want to ask you, first of all, you say that you plan on speeding up processes for grants and application. What do you intend to do? How do you intend to get that done?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question, Fotang. For me, what I mean when I say that is more or less now, I've used the bursary process here at University of Alberta. It's ridiculously slow. Not knowing if you're able to afford tuition next semester is stressful. What we can do as a union is that we can work with the registrar's office. We can also work with student group services as well to improve processes, and we can actually improve the software. And we can make things faster by ensuring that people are better able to access this type of information, and they're better able to access the type of supports that are available to them. That's what I want to do.
Can I respond?
I will only give one response time per candidate for each question, but in the end there will be time for candidates to go back and respond to previous statements. So gentlemen, I will begin the first theme or segment of tonight, which will be tuition increases and affordability. In the last 4 years, the government of Alberta has increased tuition by approximately 7% each year alongside other exceptional tuition increases. Despite the recent 2% cap on tuition increase, students are still struggling. What is your one-year strategy to effectively address these increases? Mr. Fotang, you may continue.
Okay, perfect. Yes, like you mentioned, Mateen, students have really been at the brunt end of tuition increases that we've seen in our campus. I think having talked to students over the last couple of days on the campaign, something that we have to be upfront, and my opponent talks about doing things differently, is being upfront about where our power starts and ends as the UASU, and being upfront about what we can actually achieve in 1 year, and I'm happy to talk about that. I've been fighting for tuition cuts and tuition stops for the last 2 years, but recognizing that ultimately that decision rests in the government, we can mobilize, and I will continue to mobilize students, but at the end of the day, what we can do as the SU is make things more affordable in our businesses right now, use our purchasing power to make sure that in your buying everyday goods like cheese, milk, toothpaste, you name it, that you can actually have some discounts that makes it easier for you to save on your budget monthly. Those are the achievables that we can do while we're still pursuing this ideal of affordable education, of more grants and needs-based aids, but I've still had results over that. It's been difficult working with the UCP government. Look at the stress on my face. It's not easy, but that being said, we've gotten there. We've gotten the 2% cuts, and now we can mobilize towards targeted funding and targeted supports for students, whether it's nursing students, teaching students, kinesiology students, students who have been overworked, underpaid, under-recognized in their practicums. They need that support right now, and we can start short-term and long-term solutions for them. Thank you.
Mr. Ali, you have 2 minutes for your statement. You have 2 minutes to respond to the question that was asked.
Sure, cool. Yeah, more or less now, what the Students' Union needs is, I think, is that we need advocacy. Our advocacy efforts are abysmal. To be frank, the Student Union executive team organizing protests after key decisions already made have been published is useless, is a waste of time, and is, to be frank, a bold-faced lie to students, because it's not going to change. Those tuition proposals that we have seen now are going to pass through. That is the unfortunate reality. And what we're going to see here too now, especially with this new tuition cap of 2%, is your quality of education is going to go down as well. Not only will you be paying more tuition, the quality of education on this campus will go down. What we've seen now is that the government has announced their budget. They have announced effectively a 6% cut to post-secondaries again. Because right now, inflation's at about 8%. They increased investments by 2%. That's effectively a 6% cut. Campus is obviously what we're gonna see here over these next few years is continued cuts to this post-secondary. What we need now more than ever is to mobilize campus. Trusting folks that, to be frank, failed at mobilizing campus to do it again is not smart. More or less here, what I can do as president, tangible things, I can empower student representative associations by creating an advocacy office. In this advocacy office, my goal is to effectively have all SRAs be able to access it, whether it be for messaging, whether it be for supports, whether it be for even research. By allowing this, we're going to be empowering students to take a stand. And we as a union should be there to support them. We should be there to be their backbone, but we cannot always be the ones on the front face.
Mr. Fotang.
Yeah, I mean,
you have 1 minute to respond, and then Mr. Ali, you will have another minute to respond.
You talk about being the change candidate, but all you're doing is just identifying what cuts have been. Students in this room know what cuts have. You're talking about creating an advocacy office. An advocacy office already exists. We have a director of research and advocacy. His name is John Alford. He's a wonderful man. I hope I can continue to work with him. We use research. The research we use through our PERC survey is how we managed to get a $1.6 million additional funding to hire 2 extra clinical counselors on this campus, recognizing that mental health wait times have been long, recognizing that a lot of students aren't getting the care they need that's culturally sensitive or that addresses their disabilities. We already have these things. What you're proposing isn't new, isn't different, isn't the change that you're apparently selling to students.
Mr. Ali, you have 1 minute to respond.
What I mean by change here is that more or less what's happened in the Students' Union for the past few years is our advocacies have been on businesses. Our focus has been on businesses. We've effectively lost the plot of what we are. We're a union. And when I say what I'm trying to do is bring new ideas, we're effectively saying we will continue.
1 moment. All good. Continue.
Awesome. What I mean here is that we will continue legacy projects started by past student union presidents and past student union executive teams. However, what we need to do now more than ever is refocus back onto what we are, a union, not a business. That's what I'm delivering. This platform has been crafted by student leaders and student voices, and that's what I'm excited to talk to students about.
All right, thank you for that, gentlemen. I will move on to the next question. The program-based tuition model was a model adopted by the University of Alberta in 2019, making tuition fixed for international students admitted on or after 2020, irrespective of the number of classes taken. For example, a single class in the summer term for an international student can cost up to $7,000. This model, however, poses greater challenges for international students who may be forced to take one too many classes or suffer from the high fixed cost of taking less. If elected as president, how do you plan to advocate and address this situation? Mr. Ali.
This is an issue that I know all too well. As a resident assistant, I have a group of international students on my floor, in my community, that regularly talk to me about this, about the high cost of tuition generally, but the bigger issue that we have here especially is where international students are forced to pay exorbitant tuition costs for just taking one class in the summer and spring terms, which does limit opportunity. What I think some tangible ways are doing is working with the International Student Association and empowering them, giving them the support that they need. And by support that they need, I mean giving them a permanent office space, by working with our advocacy, working with the new advocacy office to make sure that any research that they need, any messaging support that they need, they can access. What I also want to do too here is I want to build capacity. By building capacity, we'll be better able to mobilize campus for key issues and for important things that we want to change as a union.
Thank you, Mr. Fotang.
Thank you. So what you're talking about there, Mateen, is the international student cohort model. I feel for the roast in the room explaining that there was the international differential fee model, and now there's the cohort model. The cohort model, if you explained, is predictable funding for what your university cost will be. The issues with this current model is that when international students come and they have arrived in Edmonton or in Canada, the transition process is not always easy. You're alone in a new country without family and friends that you're used to. Your comfort system or care system is not there for you. So the mental health concerns start to arise. The anxiety levels start to build. And all of a sudden, 5 courses, or maybe more if you're an engineering student, starts to feel burdensome. And then what you have to do is, obviously the common sense approach is you take a few less courses because you're trying to just take it easy, right? Domestic students can do that. Well, for international students, you're taking less courses, but you're still paying $15,000 for one course, and that's not helping your mental health experience. So what we need to do is work with the ISA and work with the Board of Governors and work with the Vice Provost to see how we can make that model more flexible. I don't have the answers. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know what the policy needs to be done to change it and make it better, but we can commit to working with those who know the answers and working with international students to share their experience so we can tailor our international student assessment fee to match your experience and make your learning at the University of Alberta much better.
Thank you. In 2019, 31.6% of University of Alberta undergraduate students were qualified as either severely or moderately food insecure, in comparison to 9% of general Albertans, according to a mass study conducted by the Students' Union. What will you, as the president, do to assist these struggling students to put food on the table? And what will you do to advocate for that? Mr. Fotang.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And I also just recognize that we have our lovely Campus Food Bank Executive Director over there. And working to support the Campus Food Bank has been an incredible goal, I know, of the SU. And something that when I started in governance, I had a podcast all the way throwback to my friends. We had a cheap brews and student dues, and we decided to have a talkathon, which was a 12-hour podcast, I think from like 8 noon to like midnight. And we were just having conversations with city councilors, MLAs to talk about food insecurity and raise the awareness of, how to address that issue, but also using it as a means to donate to the campus food bank. That being said, we also know that the campus food bank aims to work its way out of existence. It should not be a permanent solution to the food insecurity problem we face in this country and in this province. We need more long-term funding. We need to address the affordability issues that pervades our campus, whether it's tuition, whether it's the need for more needs-based grants, the need to actually expose students to more financial aid. That's what I intend to do, in addition to the measures that I've talked about previously, such as more discounts for students to purchase their groceries, more ways of connecting grocery buses and students to grocers where they can get their food from. Those are some of the ways I'd be taking to address food insecurity on campus.
Thank you. Mr. Ali.
Yeah, awesome. This is an issue that I know all too well. For me, this is something I've been advocating on a national level, especially for all Canadians, is against the large grocery stores price gouging folks out of food, to be honest. For me, we have led successful advocacy efforts to summon all grocery CEOs, the big 5 grocery CEOs to Parliament Hill, to answer questions in front of MPs. More or less now, though, is when it comes to campus, what I can tangibly do is we can improve investment in the campus food bank. One of my key platform points is removing rent fees, and I want to be there as an ally, and I want to be there as a supporter for the campus food bank. But like Fotang said, the campus food bank is not a permanent solution. Long-term systemic solutions are needed, but these solutions need to come forward with support from the campus food bank, from students, from student representatives. That's what I want to deliver, and that's how I think we can combat the food issue on campus.
Thank you for that. So now that we are in the discussion of the campus food bank, actually, the next question is specifically regarding the campus food bank, and I think it's an important matter that deserves a full response for it. In the last year, the campus food bank has seen its demand increase by approximately 2 times and will potentially increase through the current rate of inflation. What are your plans as president to assist this increase in demand and to ensure that the food bank remains functional as times go by? Mr. Ali, you may begin.
The increased need for the campus food bank is, to be frank, a great example to show the government that their cuts and that their lack of investment in post-secondary education, and by not valuing an education in post-secondary, is resulting in students not being able to eat. And once again, that in itself is a statement by itself. By ensuring that we're working with by ensuring that we're working with cause, by ensuring that we're working with other student unions across Alberta, we should be able to show the province through a media campaign what their cuts are actually doing. Because I agree, I think it's ridiculous that 33% of students are not able to regularly access food or face food insecurity. That's troubling for me. What I want to do also is I want to work with the campus food bank, and this is something I've done as a students council on both terms, is by lobbying the executives, one, to remove rent fees for the campus food bank, but also two, to ensure that they're providing adequate support to all student services on campus. Thanks.
Thank you. And for candidates' information, after the 2-minute time, each candidate does have 1 minute to respond if they need to. All you have to do is just let us know.
No, when it comes to what specifically we can do to support the campus food bank, I also believe the university can play a better and bigger role here. When you present statistics like 31%, 32%, those are University of Alberta students. Those are stories behind those numbers. Those are people who are skipping meals, people who are having to choose between, am I gonna have breakfast today or lunch or supper or neither because I'm trying to stretch my budget. And when you take that information and you send it to the University of Alberta, and as VP External, I've had the opportunity to sit on the University of Alberta Senate, whose whole purpose is to, deal with the reputation and PR of the university to the university community, to the wider community, and to Alberta. When you take that story and you say that this top 4 institution, Nobel Prize winning institution, this organization that's done all these things in research, the Edmonton Protocol, all those things, but still students are struggling to eat in your campus, what are you doing about it? That's a shameful statistic to present to them. So they need to take more ownership about addressing and supporting the campus food bank, because it can't be coming from students. We're already broke, so we shouldn't be asking to be donating more. It should be coming from those who have the decision and the leverage to do better.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. Would you like to respond? You have 1 minute if you do. Would you like to respond for 1 minute or?
Yeah, actually, sure. Christian, you've had two executive teams, you had two different presidents that you have worked under, two different VPSLs. Why didn't you do this then?
Why didn't we do what, sorry?
Why didn't you advocate? What you're saying now sounds great, but why didn't you do this then? When you're VPX,
I'm going to cut candidates off. If you're going to make a statement, please make a statement and then allow the next candidate to respond if that's the case. Thank you.
That's what we do. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yes, we're not going back and forth here.
Sorry. What I was asking was that you've had two terms as VP External. Why didn't you do this during these two terms?
Okay. In terms of why didn't we do this then, we have been supporting the campus food bank. I'd be happy to let you present you to the VPSL and the president to talk more about what they've been able to achieve. But in terms of what I've been doing in my 2 terms as VP External, the provincial government put $10 million towards campus food banks and food banks across the province to use. Those are some of the results we've been able to achieve. But like I said, recognizing what's the root cause of the problem, because campus food banks should not be the permanent solution to this. So it's addressing affordability, it's addressing tuition hikes, it's addressing cuts to the university that have resulted in tuition increases. That's what I've been doing.
Thank you, Candace. Since its initiation, the Zero Textbook Cost Indicator, that was a project between former President Lay and VP Academic Abner Montero, this program has saved approximately $8 to $9 million annually for students. As a president, how will you ensure that this program remains functional, and if any, what new changes will you implement? Mr. Fotang.
Thank you. Admittedly, I don't touch on this on my platform, but you're recognizing the work that President Montero, President Lee, and also back then VP Academic David Draper did to achieve zero textbook cost has been a huge influential measure for supports for students. And VP Gurleen Kaur has also been pushing for more professors to take in that work. So I think the zero textbook cost is at a place where it just needs steady growth, more convincing of professors to take on the program. But where I think we can have an opportunity to address textbook cost affordability, and something that I regret not focusing more during my term as VPX, is talking about OER funding, Open Educational Resources funding. In British Columbia, they have something called BC Campus, and this is a program that the government of British Columbia invested in. $3 million they invested in, and you know what they saved for students in BC? $32 million. So I would hope to work with CAUSE and students across the province to push for something close to BC Campus here in Alberta.
Mr. Ali.
Yeah. I know many students that have used the Zero Talk textbook cost indicator throughout for this year and for last year as well. This is a great program. But what I want to do too is I want to build off the work of Gurleen and Abner this term by expanding the program, by working with more professors to ensure that we're able to really have more programs in here. But I also agree with Fotang over here that by ensuring that other resources than classes need, like Top Hat, like other external course fees, are also being brought in to be more affordable and included in tuition costs, will provide students with an accurate picture of how much their tuition will actually cost in the beginning of the year.
Thank you for that, gentlemen. Last year, international students were taken aback by a 6% tuition increase that would fall in effect during the 2023-2024 academic year. Despite long-lasting consequences, there was minimal consultation with international students on this matter. What will you, as the president of the Students' Union, do to ensure and advocate the involvement of the International Student Association in critical and crucial decision-makings? Mr. Ali.
Yeah, this was something actually that was a tad bit unfortunately forgotten by this executive team. I was actually one of the counselors that discovered that the 6% increase was actually up for table in the APC in the Academic Planning Committee documents. One of the things that I want to do here, the main big thing I want to do as president, is I want to shift tuition discussions away from APC back to GFC. The reason why I want to do this especially is because APC, on Academic Planning Committee, we do not have proportional control compared to GFC. On GFC, we have about almost 33% control, but when it comes to APC, we don't have that same control. By bringing these discussions away from APC, we'll be able to modify and hopefully we'll be able to recommend to the Board of Governors that we'll be able to essentially modify the Provost's tuition proposals, which I think long-term will help to, obviously make tuition, I think long-term will help to make tuition more affordable for students.
Thank you, Mr. Fotang.
Yeah, involving the International Students Associations, but also international students across our U of A community has been a priority of my term as VP External since day one. Anytime I get an invitation to any stakeholder meeting or any group that involves international students, I make it my mission to go and meet and hear from those students and get their experiences so that I'm sharing their concerns directly to the powers that be. When I was invited to the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration to talk about the disparities facing international students, especially from African countries, I went and I met with the international students in Campus Saint Jean. I went and I met with the international students from Augustana campus, and I also met with the ISA Council. So those are some of the tangible actions that I've been doing to involve the ISA in my advocacy, and I'll continue to do so if I'm president.
Any responses, Mr. Ali? Thank you for that, gentlemen.
I do have one question, though.
Yes, you have 1 minute for that.
So, because candidate Ali does mention wanting to bring the discussion of tuition from APC into the general GFC discussion board. Harun, I want to understand, what is the goal of achieving the discussion there? Because something that concerns me about taking it from APC to GFC is that in a GFC, there are professors and people in the university who would like to see tuition go up because it benefits their staff, it benefits their wages, it benefits them getting a new office or more lab research. So my concern is that, have you fully thought through what the impacts of bringing that conversation there, if it could actually mean more tuition increases for students?
Yeah, thanks, Fotang. To be frank, I think ad hominem attacks against professors I don't think are fair. By bringing these discussions away from APC, to be frank, APC's failed. APC every single time, and this time around, even we saw with Milan and Abner, when they tried cutting by 1%, it still failed by 1 vote. Regardless at the time, APC is clearly not the place to have these type of discussions because we don't have the control there. These tuitions and proposals, if they're going to go through anyways, it's better to have them in a committee where students have a significant more control because we'll have significant more student voices that range from different experiences. By allowing this you're also allowing administration, you're allowing professors to hear from different students who have different experiences. So by bringing these discussions away from APC back to GFC, hopefully I genuinely think we'll be able to do much better than what we've been doing now.
Thank you. We will be moving on, but then we will be back for open forum at the end of this debate. Gentlemen, the next segment that I will enter will be student housing. In the most concluded UASU PERC survey, over 118 undergrad students expressed living in precarious housing conditions or living in an unsafe space or unstable condition. These numbers are higher for females and marginalized groups. What are your plans as president to advocate for affordable housing? And what have you done, Mr. Fotang, as your role in VP External, and Mr. Ali as your role as a community advisor to advocate for affordable housing? I will have Mr. Fotang to begin.
Yeah, those statistics you've mentioned, there are numbers that I'm not unfamiliar with, Mateen. I actually sit on the Student Housing Stability Working Group, which is a group that has a mandate to see how we can create more medium-term housing for students on campus. Right now we have the Safe House program, and what that does is that it creates short-term emergency housing for some students who might be in precarious housing situations, but it's recognizing that we need some more sustainable and a bit more long-term measures for those type of students. So what we've been doing is actively looking for grants and money and funding that we can do to create such a medium-term housing program. We had lobbied the provincial government. We're looking towards the university for other aspects of funding, but also within my work as the former chair of the Edmonton Student Alliance, I work closely with City of Edmonton. I work closely with their affordable housing needs assessments, and I brought the data and all those research that we had gathered and provided them. And if you go to the City of Edmonton Affordable Housing Assessment, you'll see our name there. You'll see how we were part of the research and what they're doing to address affordable housing for students here in Edmonton. So those are some of the actions, and as well looking at zoning bylaw renewal, as that's been a thing in Edmonton, and how we can create more zoning across the university area and across our campus community, especially since, I don't know if people are familiar with the term NIMBYs, not in my backyard, is very strong in our university community as people are wanting to keep the cost of their houses high so they can sell and retire, but we're trying to find more affordable housing for students.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something I've advocated for the past few years. To be frank, the city of Edmonton is not the right body to be advocating for. The city of Edmonton has limited opportunities and limited ways to generate revenue besides property taxes. The right person to advocate to is the provincial government, which the provincial government has unfortunately essentially trickled down this responsibility back to municipal governments, which, to be frank, cannot afford to run affordable housing programs. For me, I'm a resident assistant. So I've lived on campus for the past 7 months to 8 months here now. I've talked to students, and housing is a big concern. Finding affordable housing for your second year, even for your first year, for brand new students coming over here that don't want to live in residence, it's a big problem. So for me, what I want to do is one of the things I want to work on as president is I want to make sure we're working with city partners. I want to work with City Councilor Michael Jans, but I also want to look at provincial supports as well, provincial MLAs, and I want to work with the parties as well, because it will be election time if I'm elected, if I start my term. And more or less, by working with these provincial parties, I think we'll be able to hopefully raise awareness about student housing and the limited capacity for it.
Thank you. Recently, there has been controversy surrounding residence dining and the hygiene surrounding it. Even though some measures have been taken and some advocacy has been done, this may be an ongoing issue in the future. As president of the Students' Union, how and with whom will you approach this matter, and what would you do? Mr. Ali.
Yeah, so I live in Lister. I eat Lister Dining Hall almost every single day, 3 meals a day. And to be frank, I agree. It's abysmal. It's disgusting, you know what I mean? I've seen brownies that are harder than ice pucks. And really what students want, they want quality food, especially considering that they're spending upwards of $6,000 on the meal plan. By ensuring that we have quality food there, and from someone that has actually lived there and understands it. You know, I mean, more or less here, what we need here is lived experience. I've seen how we do things, how resident services works, and to be frank, there are a lot of improvements I want to pass. One of my bigger ideas, and this is something that I hope that I can pass on to other exec teams as well, is minimum resident standards. By ensuring that we have a minimum that resident standards, resident associations, and the Students' Union agrees to, hopefully we'll be able to ensure that there's some sort of a base point about what's good, what's bad, and what's great. That's what I want to establish.
Thank you. Any responses out of each candidate, or are we good to move forward?
Oh, I didn't respond.
Oh.
I didn't give my answer.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, excuse me, Mr. Fotang. Go ahead, please.
No, of course, yeah. The state of residence definitely is something that needs to be improved. Recognizing that this is also an issue that mostly falls in the portfolio of the Vice President Student Life, I would want to work with them and take their direction and see where I can lend a support. As the role of president, what you have the privilege of getting in your influence is direct access to the higher ups of the university administration, whether it's the president, the vice provost, or whoever needs to make a decision. So sometimes they also understand that when action needs to be taken in our university bureaucracy, it is very slow and hard to get by. So if our VPSL is meeting those roadblocks or is meeting some challenges, working with them to see how we can get those processes done faster. Also recognizing that assessments have been done and surveys have been done to see what the resident experience has been like on our different residences. So now it's just a matter of taking that feedback and implementing a strategy for improving residents on campus.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. That is the end of the second segment. We will be having a 10-minute recess, and then we will be back. Please be back by 6 p.m. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. We're beginning this third segment of this debate that will surround campus safety. My first question on this regard will be, over 73% of undergraduate students currently use public transit. In the last 2 years, violent crimes in Edmonton have increased by 11%, while severity of crimes at the LRT stations have increased by 60%. What will your stance as president be on this matter? Mr. Ali, you may begin.
Yeah, for me, being a resident assistant, I hear stories from residents almost regularly talking about them feeling unsafe on public transit. The reality is what public transit's facing right now is a crisis of social disorder. By knee-jerk reactions, by adding more sheriffs, won't necessarily help the situation. However, though, I also realize that there is a real fear amongst the student population about taking public transit. Addressing that is a big priority of mine, which is why it's included in my platform. One of the things I want to do is I believe in community-based safety programs. SafeWalk is a great example. By boosting these investments in SafeWalk, by making it available in more hours, by making it more available for students, and by promoting it better as well, hopefully we'll be able to provide students with a safe way to get home. I also want to work with the city and provincial partners to advocate for long-term investments in safe consumption sites and supportive housing. These long-term solutions are the way and what are necessary for us to really be able to curb social disorder in our transit stations. Thank you.
Mr. Fotang.
Thank you. So transit safety and campus safety has been a huge priority and concern for students, and it's also been a huge priority and concern during my second term as VP External. Some of the things we've been able to advocate on was during the City of Edmonton budget deliberations, I went and I spoke to City Council about the measures that they can take to address transit safety, whether that's providing more peace officers and social workers and LRT stations to patrol, whether that's addressing the need for more lighting and better Wi-Fi reception and cell receptions, more floor to human height mirrors in the stairwells and other places. They've received and heard these feedbacks very well, and in the city budget, $13 million was allocated towards transit safety. Now it's just a matter of seeing that they respond accordingly and put in those measures. I have regular meetings with the ETS project safety coordinator, Tana Vey, and he's told me that hopefully by the end of March, we'll be able to see some of these measures taken place. So now it's just a matter of tracking the issue, seeing that the problems being addressed, but also providing students the opportunity to directly speak to these decision makers. So right after the election, there'll be a town hall that we're hoping to organize that's going to include the city councilor, Michael Jans, hopefully the mayor, hopefully Mike Ellis at the province, UAPS here, and other university stakeholders, so that they can tell the students what they've been doing to address transit safety and campus safety, whether it's through the community assistance team, but also you, the students, can tell them what you've been facing and some of your suggested solutions, because I've been trying to use the existing data and survey and the stories you're telling me to transmit that to City Council, but now it's just a matter of tracking that progress. And another thing is looking at ETS routes. You shouldn't be having to wait an hour, half an hour to an hour for your next bus to come alone late at night in the dark to get back home. Those are the things that add to the lack of safety concerns. So working with the city and working with ETS to improve frequency routes can also address that issue, and that's going to continue to be a priority for my term as president. Thank you.
Can I respond?
Yes, you have 1 minute to respond, Mr. Ali.
Yeah, so Christian, once again, this sounds great, but the problem here, Christian, is that this is a big issue on campus. This is something that me and you both have spoken to external media on regularly about. We both advocated to City Council on this, and we've both been successful in our advocacy on this. However, I don't see this in your platform. I don't see this as a point in your platform. And I think students deserve to know why.
For sure. I mean, part of why I don't put it in my platform is because I'm not trying to come in and say that I'm doing something new for things that I already recognize as a priority. In your platform, you've already just said it here. You've already gotten the success. So what are you trying to achieve that's new? We've already gotten the funding. We've already gotten the supports. So now it's just a matter of tracking if things are working. The data that Mateen just spoke about, 73% of students using transit, the fact that we know that the issues that students face during transit is because of our survey and research capacity. So what we can continue to do is use that survey data and be like, okay, this is what students are now saying about transit safety. Take that back to the city, take that back to the province, and see if the measures that we've been suggested coming from students is actually working. And if it's not working, let's go back to the drawing board. But I'm not gonna put things in my platform because, we just wanna put it there and then show to students that, I'm trying to get an election win. If we want to build trust with students throughout elections, it's about putting tangible supports that we know we can achieve during a year. You talk about the broken trust that we have between the SU and students, and I think part of that is just putting a platform that's just a make-a-wish list, right? We have to be actionable, we have to be pragmatic, and we also have to recognize that things are already being done. Like you've recognized legacy projects. I guess I would say that transit safety is a legacy project. It's an ongoing issue that's just going to take more than a year to achieve.
Thank you. Mr. Ali, you had 37 seconds left from your initial response. If you want, you can have 37 seconds.
Yeah, what I would say here is that, to be frank, the job is never done. Transit safety is something that is a complex, multifaceted issue, and to suggest that you've completed transit safety, I think is false. I think it's also disingenuous. What my platform includes investments in community-based safety programs and long-term investments in safe consumption sites and supportive housing. These are long-term projects that hopefully at the end of my term and at the end of other people's terms we can continue to see change on.
I will be moving on, but again, at the open forum in the end, we can come back to this matter.
Okay.
Gentlemen, last November, a survey conducted by the Students' Union on the use of campus recreation facilities showed that non-binary or LGBTQIA+ students felt very unsafe at our facilities. Many students cited the need for gender-neutral washrooms at our businesses and change rooms. How will you advocate for the voice and needs of these students, Mr. Fotang?
Thank you. Yes, addressing the issue of all gender washrooms across campus is something that's already been taken seriously by the SU towards the university. The pilot project has already been underway, and if you go on the university website at the Quad, there's already an explanation of what's being done to identify existing all gender washrooms and building across our campuses, but seeing where we can expand more. But I believe that advocacy also starts at home. As we're going to the university, we also need to address the disparities and the lack of the barriers that exist in our own organization and in our own businesses. Right now in Dewey's, we know that there is bathrooms downstairs, but they're not all gender washrooms. That's why I put in my platform, starting the plans to get the funding so that we can build an all gender accessible washroom, maybe on the main level, so that people who might need wheelchair access can not go down the stairs or having to go through the back doors or in other places or have to leave to go to SAB for a bathroom. Let's use our funding, let's find grants, let's find external ways and build an all-accessible gender washroom here.
Thank you. Mr. Ali.
I'll be frank. To me, what's called the Students' Union has a pretty bad record when it comes to having gender-neutral washrooms in our own businesses. So it's impossible, it's harder for us as a body to advocate to the university that this should be a priority for them when our own businesses won't do it and our own businesses will fight us on this. What we need to do more than ever is that we have an operating policy that we will advocate for gender neutral washrooms. We need to actualize that policy. We need to make sure that people are able to access that, people are able to access it in all of our businesses and able to use the bathroom and they don't have to leave the business to be able to access the bathroom. Dewey's is a great example. Dewey's has gotten away with not having a wheelchair accessible bathroom for far too long. So I agree, Fotang. I think getting one is crucially important. But moving on, yeah. But for especially touching on outside of the Students' Union, what our advocacy potential there is working especially with 2S LGBTQ students to empower them to be advocates. My biggest focus as Student Union President is to effectively empower others to be able to do advocacy. We want to be there to support you. We want to make sure that you can access support from the advocacy office. We want to make sure that you can train new student leaders with Discover Governance. The goal of a union is to empower others. It's to be there to be their backbone, but it's to be, and if they need support, to be there for them, but not to coddle them.
Thank you for that, gentlemen. As you are aware, policing and security, including non-uniformed officers on campus, remain a divided conversation with multiple insights on how the university and transit systems must be kept safe. With many diverse voices on this table, how would you, as the president of the Students' Union, ensure that every student's opinion on this matter and vision of safety is taken into consideration? Mr. Fotang.
Doesn't Harun go first?
Excuse me, Mr. Ali.
Yeah, My opinions on this matter are pretty publicly known. My role as student union president is to represent people's opinions, is represent all student opinions. My role here is to effectively be an advocate for you. So what my thinking, what I want to do when it comes to safety is that I want to work with, my more or less here is that during the last year's what's called campus safety and security policy discussion at council, we heard from different sides of the issue. What we need now more than ever, however, is that we have to recognize if people are feeling unsafe with police on campus, that is a valid feeling. There are long-term systemic issues with policing in this country and in this, to be frank, in this city as well. And ignoring those and putting them aside, to be frank, is not appropriate. However, there's also another side to this issue where students are feeling unsafe. The solutions to students not feeling safe on campus is not knee-jerk reactions like adding sheriffs to campus. What the solution is that investing in community-based safety programs that we know that will work, and ensuring that we're working on long-term advocacy for safe and consumption sites, for supportive housing. These are the things that I've been working on outside of the Students' Union, and I think that they will make campus a safer space, our LRT station a safer space for everyone. But this is going to take long-term work. In the short term, I support partnerships like COT by ensuring peace officers and social workers are able to help support the in-house community throughout in our LRT stations, Thank you.
Hey, Bettine, can you repeat the last part of the question, please?
Yes. The last part of my question is, with many diverse voices on this table, how would you ensure every student's opinion and vision of safety is taken into consideration? You have 1 minute, Mr. Fotang.
Thank you. I agree with what Haroon has mentioned, that this is definitely a very complex issue when it comes to policing on campus and across, the city and the province. Recognizing the history that policing has had in Canada in regards to Indigenous people, in regards to Black people, has to be taken into account when we form public safety policy on our campus. In terms of what we can do to ensure that voices are being heard, I've already been working on that. As chair of the policy committee, we've worked to make sure that we can hear from experts, but also people who are affected by transit safety, whether it's from university professors who deal with the issue of policing, or people from the city, or people from the police, or even getting the deputy chief of police to come, Nino Akira, to come speak at our policy committee. But also what I've been able to do is facilitate a conversation between the International Students Association, who I know are affected by issues of transit safety, and the Indigenous Students Union, who have those concerns around just more police presence on campus, and having that conversation about what works, how are we addressing the concerns of your group and the concerns of the other group. And it just starts with having that conversation, initiating and being there and letting those groups take leadership and take control.
Thank you.
Guiding our advocacy.
Thank you. We will be moving on to the next segment of this and the last segment of the debate, which is government advocacy. The present Students' Union Council has made significant effort in advancing Indigenous student initiatives like centralized websites for Indigenous resources and federal-level funding commitments for Indigenous students, but there still remains so much to be done. Do you know some of the concerns affecting Indigenous students, and how will you address these concerns once in office?
Repeat the question.
I will repeat the question once again. In present Students' Union Council, there has been significant efforts in advancing Indigenous student initiatives like centralized website for Indigenous resources and federal-level funding commitments for Indigenous students. But there still remains much to be done. Do you know some of the concerns affecting Indigenous students, and how will you address these concerns once in office? Mr. Fotang, I believe it is you.
Thank you. No, that is a great point you raise, and in terms of the things we can do to support Indigenous students around our campus community, the first is recognizing that Masco House is something that has been promised to Indigenous students in the Indigenous community on our campus for a very long time, so it's making sure the university doesn't lose sight of that and we can get shovels in the ground ready. But also recognizing that with the enrollment expansion program here in the University of Alberta, not only enrolling domestic students but specifically Indigenous students means that more resources needs to be had to support those students. First, People's House is supposed to be moved from Sub, I believe, to Coots Library sometime within the future. And it's making sure that they have the adequate funding needed to support a higher proportion of Indigenous students coming to learn on our campuses. So we've already been doing the work of working with CAUSE to lobby the provincial government to provide more funding for Indigenous centers. But another aspect I have in my platform, which is something I got directly from the Indigenous Student Success Survey, is recognizing that there isn't a place where we can recognize the achievements of Indigenous students and student leadership in our campus community. So something I hope to do is work with the Registrar's Office, work with First People's House, work with ISU and other Indigenous student leaders on campus to have a way that we can recognize Indigenous students not only on the months that matter, but throughout the entire year, whether it's through our university communication plan, through events, through media marketing, so that there's a presence, so that as we're getting more Indigenous students on campus, they can see themselves represented on our campus community. They can see where they can be leaders in different aspects of our campus community, and that addresses retention of Indigenous students. It's not only important to bring in more Indigenous students, it's making sure they graduate, and that's been a need that I hope to address in my term as president.
Thank you. Mr. Ali, please.
A big thing for me in politics and community organizing has always been, I'm never going to claim to know everything. There are things I'm always learning, and there are new things and new voices that I want to platform. For me, when it comes to Indigenous student issues, I want to be, once again, my goal, and this is something I actually had a really good chat outside during the break about this, is that as a union, the goal and the responsibility of a union is to empower its membership to be able to do effective advocacy. Also, we have the Indigenous Students Union here. By providing them the support of an advocacy office, by providing them the support of training new student leaders to discover governance, we'll hopefully be able to create a new generation of student voices across campus with diverse views and make up from a diverse background as well. But for us as tangible, as like Photang, I want to work alongside the Indigenous Students Union and Indigenous students and student representatives to continue to advocate for the building of Muskoka House of Learning. By ensuring that students have a space, have an identity, have a space where they can flourish, I think that will lead to long-term successes. I also think too, by working with ARC and Sub-Planning Committee to continue the work that Julia has undertaken this year of renaming rooms and displaying territorial acknowledgements in Sub, I think these are things that we need to continue to do. But it's also about building a campus community where everyone feels safe, where everyone feels like they belong. That is my long-term goal, is a campus community where you can be who you are without fear of repercussion.
Thank you. Gentlemen, yes or no? In this camp, I'm going to ask questions, so yes or no. In this election season, approximately only 4 campaigns have reached out to the Indigenous Students Union for consultation. Has your campaign reached out to the Indigenous Students Union for consultation, Mr. Ali?
That was something, I'll be honest, that was something that we did not do. We were planning to reach out to all SRAs and resident associations in the coming days to obviously get consultation on the ideas that we have in this platform, but we weren't able to, unfortunately. We had heard from other student leaders that they weren't able to get through to the ISU, so we instead something we try to do is we try to consult with Indigenous students themselves. I met them through a cab, I met them through different buildings across campus, having conversations. That was a big goal of mine.
Thank you. Mr. Photang.
Yes, thank you. So yes, I had the opportunity to reach out to the former VP consultation engagement of Indigenous Students Union, Shannon Cornelson, where we had some of those conversations. And I would hope to set up a meeting between the ISU. I had reached out to President of ISU, Malaysia Morgan, but we weren't able to get some time to set up a meeting, unfortunately.
Thank you for that, gentlemen. The Aboriginals Relations and Reconciliation Committee provided a comprehensive list of recommendations to boost reconciliation efforts. Are you aware of some of these recommendations? And how would you implement these in advancing reconciliation efforts on campus? Mr. Photang.
Thank you. Like I mentioned, as I've talked about in my platform, the recognition of Indigenous students and recognizing their efforts and awards and successes is something that has come out not only from the Indigenous Student Success Survey, but from the ARC recommendation. So that's something I hope to continue to build on in my time as president. The other thing that I've been able to work on this year, as the ARC recommendations call for, is more funding supports from different levels of government to address and support Indigenous students. As the chair of the Canadian Alliance Student Associations, I made sure to ensure that our National Indigenous Advocacy Committee was adequately funded and got the resource to firsthand take the leadership on behalf of Indigenous students across Canada. And I was really proud of the work that I was able to accomplish alongside Shannon Cornelson, who was the current chair of NIAC, to get to those goals. And some of the things we saw was that our NIAC membership went from 4 people last year to 22 people this year. We also saw that in our advocacy document that we submit to governments and different ministers and senators, that we didn't just have one Indigenous student ask in our booklet, but that every single ask had an Indigenous student lens to it, recognizing that Indigenous students aren't just put in a box of their own issues that they need to be asked for, but it's a focus that we have to address in our mission to reconciliation.
Thank you. Mr. Ali.
Yeah, as chair of NOMCOM, when we were filling seats on ARC, the student seats, this is something I became acutely aware of. And for us as a campaign team, we looked at the ARC recommendations to make sure that we were crafting this platform, that we included this voice, because we weren't able to meet with the Indigenous Students Union. However, more or less here, what I think that the Students Union needs to do is we need to, and I will keep repeating this throughout the forum, we will keep repeating this throughout the campaign, but we need to empower people to be able to do advocacy. And the Indigenous Students Union has been doing great advocacy by blending our support, by being there to aid. I think we'll be able to help, I think we'll be able to increase our advocacy capacity.
Thank you. Thank you. The University of Alberta Students' Union identified 4 key areas missing from the University of Alberta Sexual Violence Management Audit. Specifically, the audit does not commit to making resources available in French at Campus Saint-Jean or providing vital support for Augustana students. How will you advocate for commitment to these concerns in office? And do you guarantee that something will be done as your term if you are to become president? Mr. Ali.
For me, what was it? I know how it feels to try to access services in when you don't speak the language that the services are in, especially when traumatic incidents like that happen. By ensuring that you can access supports in the language that you're most comfortable in, we will be able to help support. We'll be able to help support folks. What I think tangible ways we can get this advocacy done is, once again, by ensuring that in working with the Campus St. John Student Association, by advocating with them and by empowering them to empower CSJ students to tell student stories about why and how this is affecting them. One of my primary goals, and actually a letter at the end of the platform, is how do I plan on delivering? How do I plan on delivering? We look at different things like direct action, we look at letters, we look at letter campaigns, we look at protests. These are tangible things that will make sure that we're able to get them done. But for me, what I want to do, obviously, is if elected, I want to work with Campus St. John. I want to make sure as well that we're working with survivors to ensure that our policies, our sexual violence policies as a university, make sense.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
You both mentioned affordable education.
Mateen, sorry.
Excuse me. Yes, you have 1 minute to respond if you want.
Oh, no, give my answer. It's all
yes,
good.
my apologies. Please go ahead.
It's a 3-hour debate, man. It's all good. But before I answer my question, I actually want to start by also giving praise and recognition to the student leaders and the students who were able to get that sexual violence audit happening. My opponent has stood here and said that our advocacy is not effective and we're not getting anything done, but we know that things and measures like that would not have happened without the leadership of students on this campus. So I want to start by that, and women leaders on this campus, to be specific. Going forward in terms of the sexual violence audit and what I've been able to do and what we can continue to do is we worked to provide a pre-budget submission. Sadly, we have to continue the work, but we worked to provide a pre-budget submission that would call for more funding towards Augustana campus and Campus Saint-Jean to handle with the translation, recognizing that a lot of the reasons that we see these services not being delivered is the budget cuts that's faced by our university. But also in response to Augustana, we were also successfully able to get $1 million from the provincial government towards rural communities, which Camrose would qualify for in terms of sexual violence response kits for survivors in the region.
Can I take a moment to respond?
Yes, Mr. Ellie, you have 1 minute to respond.
When I say our advocacy isn't effective, I mean, I don't mean as a students' union, what our primary goal should be is, and what we're legislatively mandated to do is be an advocacy body. When I say that our advocacy isn't efficient and isn't delivering results, I mean more so that a lot of the wins that Fotang is talking about have been delivered by students and delivered by student leaders. More or less, what a student union should do is we should be empowering students to be able to do this advocacy effectively. That's what I want to see. That's why in my platform we include the reinstatement of Discover Governance. That's why we include the creation of an advocacy office, so we can provide these resources and these supports to students so they can access them and they can build off of them, and we can be there to be that backbone for them whenever they need it.
Mr. Fotang, you have 1 minute to respond if you wish.
Arun, so when I first ran for VP External, and the Gateway folks are here, and they respectfully called me out for things that I didn't get right or use the term general advocacy, and they actually put, that people should vote none of the above me, and I took, not to sound like Michael Jordan, I took that personally, but looking back, I recognize the fact that it's important to be equipped with the right information, and it's important to be informed and know what you're talking about when you're meeting with decision makers. To dismiss the efforts of student executives and past student executives and people who have had to be re-traumatized by talking about their history with sexual violence on this campus so that we can see change for survivors. You say that we want to make our policies more user-friendly or accessible. That work is being done. You say you want to update our policies or get a sexual violence response coordinator in Augustana. That work has been done. If you just take 2 seconds and do your research and learn and be prepared for the job, you will know that some of the things you're advocating for have already been done. And so what we need to do is just continue to work with the student body, hear from them, rebuild that trust, and not continue to just use slogans and pundits and things that we're just using for election reasons, but actually connect with the students.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you both mentioned affordable education as a key takeaway on your platforms. But this has been addressed over the past 4 years. How will you approach it differently and guarantee additional success? Mr. Ali, you may begin.
How we want to approach this differently, and more than ever now, we need to shift discussion to tuition away from APC, bring it back to GFC, where we have more student voices, we have more student support there, and we can tell student stories about how education is affecting them and how we can do better on that. What we also need to do too is we need to work with the Register and Provost to speed up the process of obtaining need-based grants through the University Bursary Program to make these supports more widely accessible. I know for me this year, accessing the bursary program, I didn't know if I had funding for the fall semester until November of the fall semester. By ensuring that students have predictable funding, we will ensure that they're able to focus on their studies and be students, because that's what they should be.
Thank you. Mr. Fotang.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, something that's important to clarify too is that tuition discussions are made and have the sole jurisdiction of the Board of Governors. The reason that it's discussed at APC is because the board has delegated that authority and decision-making to APC. So ultimately, if it has to be changed, it's through the Board of Governors. But in terms of how I want to change my approach this year, I think something that I've put in my platform and also been affirmed by talking to a lot of first-year students on our campus is that they don't know what the SU does, or they don't know aware of what the SU is up to beyond just services or events or even the advocacy aspects of things. So in my platform, I talk about an annual meeting of members, and what I hope this can be is after Week of Welcome in the fall, we can actually get students together, especially mostly first-year students, educate them about what their SU does, educate them about the advocacy that we've been doing, hear from them about how they would like to be supported, because there's going to be first years in September who didn't get to sit in this debate, who didn't get to have a say or influence my platform. So it's important that we can engage with them as well. And then once we have that connection, that's how we build the buy-in. But we also get buy-in and input from students by just our services and the experiences students have with us. When students have to go through a granting process that's frustrating and annoying, and then the SU, and then they have to go through hundreds of pages for a small amount of money, it just makes them not feeling, it doesn't leave a good taste about the SU in their mouths. So we have to improve other aspects of our organization so that students have a good feeling with the Students' Union, so that when we call on them to come out and protest and to come out and take direct action, they have trust in us, they believe in us. It's those small measures that we can take towards mobilizing the student body and building a better advocacy tool on this campus.
Thank you both. that becomes the end of the questions we had as the elections office. I will be allowing 15 minutes of an open forum between each candidate if they want to bring up anything discussed previously to each other's attention. This debate will be 15 minutes, and if needed, I will be intervening if you guys speak on against each other.
I go first?
Mr. Ali, you may begin, sure. And
Yeah.
each person will have 1 minute per speaking term.
I wanted to quickly address something that Fotang said a couple of minutes ago. We are absolutely not critiquing the efforts of student leaders over the past few years, especially on their advocacy on sexual violence. That would be inappropriate, and that suggestion is once again disingenuous, and it's disappointing to see Fotang doing that. More or less, what we're saying here is our advocacy can be more effective. When I say our advocacy isn't effective, I don't mean that for every single thing. We've been able to deliver some big wins for students, but this advocacy is not done just by the students' union. It's done by a group of students' unions across this country. It's not just done by CASA, it's done by CFS. It's done by a collection of students across this country, across this province, across the city. And more or less what I'm saying here is that we're a union, not a business. Our role is to empower students. Our role is to empower new student voices through Discover Governance. Our role should be to help aid student representative associations in their advocacy through an advocacy office where they can access research and messaging support. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, I guess I can go next with my question. You've gone over this theme about, that we're a union, not a business. I disagree. I think that we can be both. We can be both a strong union and a strong business. We can use our businesses and the revenue we generate from our businesses to support our advocacy, to support our union efforts. So I'm gonna ask you then, Haroon, with all these services expansions that you promised in your platform, but also somehow wanting to cut our businesses, whether it's Dewey's or Supprint, I don't know, you haven't clarified, are you then intending to raise student union fees?
It's disappointing to see so much disingenuousness on this side, on the other side of the podium. More or less, what we're saying here, when we say we're a union, not a business, what I mean, we're not cutting anything. It's just frankly disingenuous. What we're saying here is that we're saying that we as a students' union need to refocus our interests. Our interests here, more or less, are not just corporate, they're advocacy related. And what I'm saying, over this past term, what we have seen here is we've seen the expansion of our business side of the Students' Union, which I absolutely support. I support all efforts to reduce the student reduce our reliance on student fees. The reality is though, I can't support those efforts if they're taking away from our primary focus. You cannot be both a union and a business. It does not work. And that's what we're seeing now is that, to be frank, we're doing both. The thing here is, and I talked to the general manager about this, is that our hands are in too many cookie pots. We clearly have...
Rally. Thank you. Time is up. Mr. Fotang, you may resume if you want.
Oh, I guess that's my questions, but I don't know.
Okay. If that concludes all the open forums, then I will allow the
Sorry. By open forum, we can, if we want to raise...
If you have a question from Mr. Fotang, you may resume, yes.
Okay, I don't have a question. Okay.
You do?
No.
Okay, now that concludes the questions from the elections office. I will be allowing the public to ask any question from whether that be President Fotang, President candidate Fotang or presidency candidate Ali. And yes, Ethan, could you... So Ethan will just carry on the microphones, and yes, please go right ahead.
All right, so thank you so much. Thank you so much to the CEO for putting on this debate. So yeah, my question is, you guys both talked about, based on what I hear about housing, you guys talked, as many of you may know, on my Twitter account, I released a past document that has been hidden since 2008, where in 2008, the administration of Ed Stelmach put together a plan for affordable housing that should have ended, that would have ended homelessness by 2019. But as you can see, the homeless problem has gone worse since 2008, and neither of you guys have spoken on that and how that might impact students. So I want to ask you guys, are you aware of this document? And if so, how do you plan to use that to help ensure that students can afford their housing?
Awesome. Yeah, Milan. What's it called? I saw your tweet actually. I retweeted it. For me, through Edmonton's Future, what we've been doing is we've been advocating to City Council and city partners for more affordable housing. That's something that's been a big focus of us. That's something that we did continuing past my municipal campaign, was to make sure that we have affordable housing, especially in the university district. Stelmach's vision for ending houselessness, I believe, while I supported it, I think a lot of what Stelmach's vision included there was outdated. I think that as what ends up happening with these type of advocacy efforts is that new information becomes available that sometimes contradicts what a current information says, you know what I mean? So obviously the province is gonna have to adapt and it's gonna have to change, and it's an everlasting response. Solving houselessness is a big task. I think it's a task that's achievable, but I think it's a task that needs not just city, not just province, but federal support as well. It needs a trio of support that we can advocate for. However, there are other organizations that are doing far more effective jobs. We don't need to be the face of every issue. We can help support from the background. We can help provide support. We can sign letters. We can be a part of direct action. But that does not mean that we have to be the front facing of every issue.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Milan. I mean, to answer your question straightforwardly, I haven't had the chance to look at that report, but if you can send it my way, I'd love to take a look at it. But also thinking beyond just affordable housing, because I do agree with what Haruna said in terms of the levels of government and resources that are needed to build more affordable housing across the country the advocacy is already there. But I think where we can focus on is thinking beyond when housing has been built, is how are we supporting students who are renting? How many of you know the dodgy landlords who don't respond to your mail or respond to the fact that a sink is broken or the shower is not working or there's some plumbing and infrastructure issue? We also then need to equip students with the ability to know the rights about housing as tenants, but also know where they need to go, but also maybe do some advocacy in regards to broadening the rights for students in terms of tenancy agreements. So that's where I think there's an opportunity to expand our advocacy when it comes to the housing issue.
Okay. Thank you for that. So to make matters easier, as you can see, we're going to have people lined up here if they have any questions. So just come here, your name, affiliation, if any, and then ask your question.
Hello, Levi Flaman, candidate for VP Operations Finance, I guess. At some point between the receipt of the order in council appointing the new Board of Governors nominees and the beginning of the term, historically the President-elect and the BOG Rep-elect sit down and divvy up the board committee appointments. Out of the committee seats available, which two would you choose to sit on and why?
I haven't had the opportunity to think about the seats I choose to sit on or why. Sorry.
I also share that too. I think for me, that's something I want to consult with my team. I want to consult with the next Board of Governors rep as well, because I think by working with them to really ensure that for us, I think we have me and the next Board of Governors rep will have different strengths, and by ensuring that we're obviously capitalizing on those strengths, I think will be the best thing possible for students.
My name is Rowan. I'm a candidate for Vice President Academic. My question specifically is for candidate Ali. Throughout the debate tonight, you have repeatedly stated how you want to empower certain marginalized groups to engage in action. However, the way that I have been interpreting this is that it seems like you want to put extensive labor onto the backs of marginalized individuals without any equity. As you have talked about empowering a certain group here and a certain group there and a certain group there, but you haven't discussed taking responsibility for the issues on this campus that create marginalization for those individuals.
That's an absolutely great question, Rowan. For me, I'm a community organizer. Community organizers, there are lots of community organizers here on campus that would love to do advocacy-related efforts on campus. The problem is we just don't know where to start. You know what I mean? There's not a guidebook of information. The institutional knowledge barrier to the Students' Union is quite high. So when I say that I want to empower students, I'm talking about all students. I'm not talking about one specific group. We're talking about everyone. By empowering, that is what a union does. The responsibility of a union is to ensure that their memberships are able to do it, because we're a collective of students. It's not just a couple students at the helm. It should be a collective running this organization, being the advocates there. We can do this by being effective advocates. Yes, I agree that there are a lot of responsibility the Students' Union needs takes. We cannot absolutely pass everything down, but what I'm saying here is a lot of things that we do as a Students' Union can be better done by other people, but can be done in support and conjunction with other student leaders.
Is it me? All right, hi everybody. My name is Abner Montero. I serve as current president of the Students' Union. I have no affiliation with either campaign. So my question is, it's one of the hardest questions as president that you need to be able to answer, in my opinion. As president of the Students' Union, you are one of 2 undergraduate students on the Board of Governors who represent over 35,000 undergraduate students. When there are very important decisions at the Board of Governors, you are put in the position where, as required by the Post-Secondary Learning Act, you have a legal obligation to represent the best interests of the university. That does not mean students, that does not mean faculty, that does not mean any specific constituency, but that means the best interests of the university overall. My question to both of you is very simple. How would you, when put in a position of having to advocate on behalf of students, but also having a legal obligation to the university, advocate in the best interests of the university and in students?
Can I go? I'll be frank. I think the best interest in this university is what's in the best interest of students. We are, to be frank, one of their larger revenue sources. We are the ones that come to this campus every single day. We are the ones that use their buildings. We are the ones that use their washrooms. We are the ones that walk around campus. We are the ones that, we are 35,000 students, a collective of students. So we should be their most important priority, and what's best interest of the students is obviously in the best interest of campus. Tuition, I've seen what happened. I read the Gateway article about the current Board of Governors rep. I don't agree with them. I don't think necessarily suggesting that your duty to the university should supersede your duty to students. What's in the best interest in my viewpoint, in my genuine viewpoint, what's in the best interest of this university is what's in the best interest of students. And by making that a priority and by making that clear to the Board of Governors with the next Board of Governors representatives, I think we'll be able to get some big advocacy wins.
Yeah, in similar sentiments, what's in the best interest of the university? The University of Alberta often likes to throw the term around for the public good. And I think if they're going to stay true to that statement, they need to recognize that being for the public good is creating incentives, creating programs, designing their budget and things in a way that supports and addresses the needs of students. Too often on this campus and too often when it comes to tuition discussions, students are treated as a client or a customer of the university. That's not the way it should be. We're an equal partner or stakeholder when it comes to the way we design this university, design our future, design our strategic plan. So for me, what's in the best interest of the university is also what's in the best interest of students, and what's in the best interest of students has to be rooted in making this university good.
Can I go? Okay. Hi, my name is Jillian. I am affiliated with Rowan Morris's VP Academic Campaign. So I just wanted to ask, because looking at this year's candidates for the executive, there's only one candidate of a minority gender. I would love to know what your plan is to rectify this for next year, beyond just empowering people of minority genders to run, as it's very evident that what it takes to empower a man to run versus someone of a minority gender is 2 very different categories.
I am so sorry. Would you be able to repeat your question? I'm so sorry.
I'm just wondering what your plan is to increase the number of minority genders in student governance, specifically within executive for next year, as there's predominantly men running this year. It is very evident that empowering minority genders to run is very different from empowering men to run. So what is both candidates' plans for that?
Okay. For sure. You're absolutely right that more needs to be done to include women in governance beyond just encouraging them to run. We already know that if you want to get more engagement from women candidates to run, you need to tap them on the shoulder around 7 times. But the issue needs to be just more than, hey, you should consider running, you'd be good at this. What we need to do is fix the overall system and the culture that exists within governance right now. A system that does not support women to speak up about their problems while they're in governance, but instead when they've left governance. I think those are the things we need to be looking at. And as an executive who's had to work with 2 teams with women executives in it, I've heard those concerns. When they bring things to council, they've had to work twice as hard to get the attention of council and get the attention of male councillors, especially, to be treated with the same respect. So more needs to be done to shift the the culture and actually make it a welcoming space to empower women in governance to say their piece and feel comfortable and take leadership while they're there in the positions and not express themselves when they're out.
Yeah, thanks so much for the question, Jillian. I totally agree with my competitor, Fotang. I think some of the things that we can do tangibly, though, is provide education, provide support, especially support people that are current student leaders. One of the things I want to do, and something that we included as a legacy project that we want to absolutely continue, is Stride Campaign School. And by ensuring that we're supporting gender marginalized students in running for governance, underrepresented students and genders in running for student leadership positions, we as a campus need to have more diverse voices at the helm. We need to have more diverse voices because that's what campus is now. Campus is an ever-evolving place. On this next executive team, it will be majority men, and to be frank, that's concerning. We want to ensure that there are female perspectives on there. For us, something we'll be trying to do is we'll try absolutely to consult with female students. We'll try to consult with female student leaders to ensure that we can fill that gap. But hopefully next year, I want to encourage student counselors to run for student executive positions. I want to make sure too that we're able to empower students to be able to run through Discover Governance, through supports throughout their time in governance.
To candidates? I'd just like to clarify because it was just stated that the next executive will be mostly men. The next executive will be all men. I am a trans man. Both of you have committed to equity, so why wasn't that like, that's just, I just need to make that correction.
Yeah. Yeah, totally sorry about that, Rowan. By saying mostly men, I was not alluding to anyone. I was just, I should have said all men. My apologies on that.
Hello, my name is Jin. I'm a first-year pharmacy student, and I don't have any affiliation to either candidate. Both candidates have in their platform a plan to have an annual general meeting to improve consultation with students ahead of the 4-year UASU strategic plan. I'll be candid. Candidate Fotang, this was also a promise that you put on your platform when you ran for VPX, but it was never fulfilled. Not every student has UASU perks, and last year saw the lowest number of students voting in the past decade. How will you ensure that students are properly communicated with and there's proper transparency around the consultation for this 4-year strategic plan?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I absolutely agree that the barrier to getting involved for the average student is so high. Some look at the student union and say, yeah, I'm good. And I can't blame them. The amount of my friends that told me, the amount of my friends that were shocked by the amount of work that goes into a student union campaign is just insane. What we need to, the reason why I included an annual general meeting is that is something that a union does. By keeping its memberships informed, by ensuring, that's something that we included, that's something we said, how are you going to keep me accountable? We are going to ensure that we have regular social media updates. I want to hold regular town halls like Milan said. I want to make sure that we're actually keeping the student voice there. Because for me on campus, one of the most frustrating things has been just how hard it is to access execs. I want to make sure that we're regularly accessible to students and to campus as a community. I want to be out there. I want to make sure that, yeah.
You're absolutely right, Jin. It's something that I've tried to pursue in terms of town halls in the past, and admittedly, we haven't really gotten far. Recognizing that I was also a VP external, wanting to convince a team of other people. But as president, I hope that we can make it the mandate of our team to actually hold ourselves accountable to the student body. In terms of how we get there, we have to just think beyond perks. We have to be creative. Throughout the summer, it's staying in touch with the students. It's staying in touch with students at Week of Welcome and Fall. And also the logistics of this event will also probably have to be hybrid, recognizing that we have students at campus, recognizing that we have students at Augustana, getting interpreters as well to make sure that it's accessible in the French language. But that event should be there as a means of being transparent. A lot of candidates throughout this week are going to be telling you a lot of promises and a lot of things they're going to accomplish. Oftentimes, you don't hear about what's been done either through a social media advocacy update in the trimester or maybe the gateway report cards. So we actually need to be consistently communicating with students. I know it's something that I've pushed to do this fall semester. I wanted to make a town hall. We ended up turning into tuition town hall. So I see it as a success there. But the goal is to actually work hard to be accountable.
Thank you, Mr. Fotang.
Good evening to you both. My name is Taylor. I'm a third-year student at the University of Alberta's Campus Saint-Jean. I'm also the president of Campus Saint-Jean's Faculty Association, la UFSG. I am affiliated with Christian's campaign, but I have no problem asking this question to the both of you. As president, when I heard the announcement from the government of Alberta with the cap on domestic student tuition increase, but not seeing that cap on international student increase, that was a huge concern for me, not only for the students in which we represent here at Campus Saint-Jean, but the international student body at large. So my question to both candidates would be, what tools, if elected, what tools would you use at your availability to try and to continue advocating for international students, and more specifically trying to address the concerns that associate with the international tuition increase?
For me, as a resident assistant, I often hear from residents talking to me about the cost of tuition. Last semester, a resident came to me and told me that they're gonna have to drop out of university because they're no longer able to continue to afford university. The price of an education has significantly gone up for these international students that are now entering into this next degree. For a government that continually says that they are here to support students, it feels quite lonely. It doesn't feel like that love and that support is there for students, especially for international students. What we need now more than ever is we need to show the government, and once again, I will keep repeating this, we need to show the government the effects of their cuts. We need more creative ways, we need more interesting ways. Just like the same energy we put into these student union elections, we need to put this into the same energy into showing the government. We need to bring back ideas like Rowan Lays, when he brought a bunch of penguins to the legislature. These are cool things that we can do to show the government the effects of their cuts. It gets media attention. It gets the support of the electorate. Yeah.
Question?
Yeah, thank you, Taylor, for your question. As previously explained in regards to international student tuition, the cohort model provides predictability, but the tuition and fees regulation gives Board of Governors of different universities the ability to set international tuition the way they want it to be. That's why my goal is to work with the International Students Association and the university to assess and see how we can reevaluate the way international student fees are assessed. Because right now it doesn't provide flexibility. It doesn't recognize the fact that when you're taking 5 course loads, it becomes burdensome and mental health issues start to build and you just need to take a break. So seeing what ways we can do to fix that. But in terms of other long-term advocacy for international students, the biggest thing I've heard has been study permit processing and work hours. This year we managed to get $50 million to be put towards IRCC to address study permit processing, especially in countries and continents like Africa where there's only one immigration office processing applications from 5 countries in Senegal, Dakar. The other thing we can do is work hours for international students. We were successful this year in temporarily eliminating work hours from 20 to just anything it wants to be. I hope it can stay that way, but realistically, I probably think
thank you, Christian.
Government
Thank you,
wants
Christian.
to go back. But yeah, it's all good.
Hello, I'm Bradford. I am a second-year political science student here at the university. I have no real affiliation with either campaign. My question is pretty simple. I just want to give a quick little preface as to why I'm asking it. I gotta say, this is maybe one of the most ridiculous exercises I have ever been a part of. I mean, just like Da Vinci-esque masterclass on both sides of non-answers. I mean, like, Haroon, you're making allegations about this dark, shadowy union collective in business. You say, oh man, a union, not a business, but I have yet to see establish reasons for why it is this business and not the union, you say. And then Foteng, you're saying, I mean, whenever there's a question that you don't feel like you have an answer for, I feel like it's almost a quick name drop, and I feel like to suggest often that some of these problems have already been solved is kind of ludicrous to any student that has been on campus once, ever. And to me, it seems like just some of the things I've been hearing, it feels like kind of an exhausting exercise. I mean, like in every political type of thing, the union is no exception. It feels like everybody always says, this is where it went wrong before, I'm gonna change this. But it's the same thing everybody always says. It is always the same thing. Like some of the things I've heard claps for tonight have been some of the most ridiculous statements I've probably ever heard. Like, I feel like so many people in here made up their mind before either candidate even opened their mouth. I mean, it's amazing what, I mean, by the way, really fire turtleneck and a slick haircut will do for you, but it feels like there's almost a, I mean, you say, I'm almost done, I promise. You say almost, I mean, you call him President Foteng. What kind of Freudian slip is that, right? Like, my question is basically this. All I'm saying. Why should we trust you? Because every political type of thing that I have been a part of, I hear the exact same things, the exact same non-answers. And I ask this to both of you, and I have no agenda against either of you. You seem like really nice guys, but why should we trust you guys of all people? I mean, what's different about this? Because to me, it just sounds like the same things that you hear at any political type event, whether it be a small town mayor thing or a, countrywide election. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
One moment. Before you guys resume, I would just like to say I would apologize for that slip. I meant to say Vice President Fotang, and that was a slip on my end, and I apologize. Anyways, please go ahead.
Yeah, Bradford. Seriously, I think you're. I loved your question. I'm gonna address 2 points of your question: the union, not a business, and the why you should trust me. One, what I mean by a union, not a business, I mean is that we want to take under advocacy efforts. Our advocacy efforts over the past few years have suffered for our business interests. Our business interests like Dewey's, like what's called opening up a brand new restaurant this year called Balmoral Lounge. These type of things take away from the plot. The plot is we're a union, not a business. We're there to advocate for students, not profiteer off students. The second part of your question, why students should trust me? I have a pretty great track record, I would say, in advocacy. For example, we were able to launch an advocacy campaign just 3 weeks ago that resulted in the parliament summoning big CEOs to grocery stores without $1 million organization behind me, without 2 of them actually. We were able to do this because of the work of my connections with local community organizers that are able to help support us. That's what we need. We need a union that is reaching out to more people, and that's what I want to do.
It's all good. I like the haircut. I don't know why it's getting so much attention all of a sudden, but in terms of your statement there, as I mentioned before, running for the first time when you're wanting to affect change, but you don't know what you're talking about it, people call you out, and rightfully so. Like I mentioned before, the first time I ran and I was saying, I want to achieve this, I want to achieve that, and people said, well, how do you intend on doing that? I kind of shook and I just resolved to, well, I'll advocate with insert group, I'll advocate with insert group because that's what I could do from my own research. Over the time, and what good leadership is taking in feedback, becoming a better person, taking that in and growing as a leader. Being specific and being targeted and actually having tangible solutions to your answers is how you grow trust with the student body. I'm not name dropping names because I'm trying to show off how much I know. I'm name dropping names to show to the student body that I actually have a plan in place for what I want to do to achieve the goals I've set out to do in my platform, rather than just putting vagaries such as,
Thank you, Mr. Fotang.
Hello, my name is Calvin. I'm a vice president of the Hub Community Association. I have no affiliation with any campaign. My question is very simple. How did the campaigns hope to connect with the resident associations on campus, such as Lister Hall, who next year has to deal with a renegotiation of the campus dining services with the university and a private company? How does the 2 campaigns and the student union at large hope to connect with the resident associations?
Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to go. So one of the ways that we can easily connect with the resident associations is through CORA, the Council of Residency Associations. I'd be working with the Vice President Student Life there to see how I can provide support for them. But another thing that we can do to facilitate information sharing and see how we can build and support each other as issues are coming by. One candidate has mentioned the need to bring back the Student Representative Association Summit. And I believe that's an opportunity to also expand it and bring RAs into it because they haven't been included in the SRA Summit. So we can get their feedback, see how we can provide more support to them in terms of student leadership, and then also grow from there in terms of keeping up to date and keeping each other informed as issues pass by and information goes through different circles of the university.
Yeah, and so for me, I live in residence, right? And Calvin, we talked about this before this debate, actually. Obviously, I know these dining negotiations are going to be crucially important. Folks shouldn't have to see cockroaches while they're trying to grab their morning breakfast. So what I want to do is I want to work with resident associations first off, one of the problems that the LHSA is facing right now is a dwindling amount of student leaders. So I want to work with Discover Governance to empower students to take student governance on, to support them throughout their career, career there. But I also want to make our advocacy office information, our research, our materials available to resident associations so they can use it in their advocacy. We want to be there to be a backbone, but we don't want to coddle anyone because resident associations know far better than the Students' Union does on what residents want. And as a lister, as a resident assistant, I firmly believe that. Yeah, thanks. Sorry, how long? Mateen.
All right, we're good now. Sorry. Oh, is that too loud? I'm so sorry about that. All right, Neil Regmi, candidate for Vice President Academic, also an current education counselor and GFC representative on the Students' Union. So my question to both of you is, above all these things that I've served as being a counselor and a candidate, yeah, okay. All right, so my question to you guys is, firstly, and I'm gonna make it a bit personal for me, above all my roles I've served as a two-time senator, as our GFC representative, as an education counselor, I'm most importantly an education student. And one of the things that I've personally been hearing from my constituents in education is that it's how hard it is to be on a practicum, where they're basically doing 80% of the teacher load, basically like a work experience program, but unlike programs like art and engineering, which provide co-ops and work experience, education students do not get paid for a practicum and are often discouraged from getting different jobs, making it much harder for education students, both physically, emotionally, and mentally, to go by. And this is the same like with other faculty such as KSR. So my question to you guys is, what is you guys' plan to make sure that students who are not getting paid on practicums and are being discouraged from taking jobs can get the funding that they need to be able to live affordably and to be able to concentrate on their practicums?
Yeah. Thanks so much. I was actually rushing to find something I've said in the past about this, but at CSJ Forum today, I said this as well. If McDonald's tomorrow announced that they were going to not pay their staff and call it work experience, people would be rioting. It's completely unfair. To be frank, unpaid practicums are a form of labor exploitation, in my personal opinion. The university should not be sending students into these scenarios because it's just not fair. It's not fair to tell students that, hey, you got to figure out your rent, you got to figure out your food, but we also expect you to work as well. That's not fair. Students deserve to be able to have supports available to them when they're on practicum. It's not fair to say that, hey, good luck, folks. It's not fair. And as president, I want to work with the Education Association and the Kin Student Association because there are a lot of students that actually go on practicum for these two faculties, unpaid practicums most of the time, to be able to advocate better for more paid practicums and more paid experiential learning. Thanks so much.
Yeah, we had this discussion earlier at the IUFSG forum. As Haroon has mentioned, and I've put out in my platform, working with the FAs to create a detailed approach for how we can push the momentum in this issue is very important. In the long term, it's going to require changes to legislation, working with multiple ministries and departments, so we can set up the foundation there. But in the short term, it's looking at what existing supports we can what existing supports we can expand or create to address the needs that students with paid practicums go through. Right now I have a friend who's a nursing and he was stationed in St. Albert Hospital. He lives in the south side of the city, so if he has to get to St. Albert Hospital on time, early in the morning, he can't take the bus because ETS is undependable. He could bike there, but that's not sustainable, and you could take the taxi, but that's not sustainable either. So he's been forced to have to buy a car and pay gas, and on top of tuition, on top of groceries, on top of that. So we can work with the FAs, work with the university, because the university also has a lot of ownership on this issue, because what does it say about the university? That they value their business students and engineering students to get paid, but what about their teaching students, nursing students, and kinesiology students?
Hi, my name is Paige, and I'm the current Vice President Academic with the Business Students Association and a presidential candidate for them as well. As a business student, I see the SU businesses as a very crucial aspect of the organization. And the revenue from those businesses go to support the initiatives that the SU puts forward, like its campus food bank and whatnot. So I guess for both of you, I have to ask, how do you plan on growing and supporting all of the SU businesses so that they can continue to go and support the initiatives that you offer?
Yeah. Yeah, the biggest aspect is that we have to diversify our approach in terms of who our customers are. Obviously, businesses like Dewey's and Rat are there to exist and provide a service for students to just have a quiet place to get food, have fun with their friends, and enjoy. We don't try to make it a profit-driven place where we're trying to gouge off students. No, but there are other revenue things that we can provide, whether it's Supprint. It's not just students who use those. There's Balmoral Lounge. If you go to the Footfield Center, the fitness center, it's more than just students who use that place. I recently got into curling last year, and it's a wonderful sport. It's a great beer sport. That's an easy revenue generating aspect. So these are the way we can grow as an organization and grow our businesses, but also not just working by ourselves, working with the different SUs and SAs in the Edmonton region. How can we leverage our purchasing powers as students to get better deals for students in the Edmonton area? I think that's one way of looking at it too.
Yeah, this may be a more controversial take. However, we are legislated to be an advocacy body. I agree that these businesses fund our operations. I'm absolutely not saying we're going to cut them, but I'm saying my goal as president is to refocus back onto advocacy. Once we're doing stellar advocacy, once that area, because the problem here is that our advocacy and our businesses are running at deficits. Right now, this place we're in right now operates at a deficit almost every single year for the past few years. It's, to be frank, it's not helping the Students' Union that much. The businesses that we do run that are successful bring us minimal returns for the investment. But the other problem here too that we have is that so many of our senior management, so many of our staff are dedicated towards this when we could be in fact working on other projects, when we could be working on new advocacy, when we could be working on and refining our advocacy efforts. I want to refine our advocacy efforts, focus on that, and then we can focus on businesses but the businesses that we focus on have to be related to student services, because by opening up Balmoral Lounge, for example, that's not going to be primary students.
Thank you.
I'm going to cut out. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Paulina. I'm an engineering counselor on the Students' Union, and I'm also the BA director of the Engineering Student Society. So I'm not affiliated with any campaign, and this is to both of the candidates. But Haroon, in your platform, you mentioned that council was very unproductive, and that is one of the reasons why you left. And it's also known that the word toxic and council are thrown around together quite frequently. So what I want to know from both of you is how have you two contributed to that kind of environment in council this past year? And as presidents, what will you do to change that?
Did I go far? Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, Paulina, thank you so much for that question. As a counselor this time around, for me, my primary goal was to engage with students and was to be there and to be an active counselor. And what that resulted in was me being on about 7 different committees for students, chair of NOMCOM, and becoming burnt out in November. So more or less here, when this comes to this next council, my goal was to foster a sense of community. My goal was to foster through GovCamp, to use GovCamp as a way to build community amongst counselors, because at the end of the day, we are going to be there for the next year to advocate for students by instilling in them that we are here to work together as a collective, not against each other. We are here to work with us and with students. We'll be able to hopefully improve the council culture and build a more resilient students council that is full of student seats, because right now, unfortunately, our primary example, we only have 1 student representative out of 7 seats, which is the more hands are available, but 7, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Improving the culture in council is going to take the work of everyone, but especially the executives who are able to set the tone and create a welcoming environment for councillors. In terms of, areas where we definitely could have done better, you look at the council speaking charts and who's spoken the most, it's always the usual suspects of mostly male councillors, and not enough empowering of other councillors, especially female councillors, to lead ideas and lead conversations. So I think that's an aspect that we can definitely improve on. The other aspect is actually grounding council to an action plan and what it's supposed to achieve in 1 year. Sometimes it just feels as council we're looking for things to talk about. We're looking for work to do. We don't go into the year with an actual mission. We don't try and combine the goals of the executive with the missions of the committees and maybe what councillors are trying to achieve. I think creating some kind of council action plan can really help in grounding council and giving us step-by-step work towards the year that we can check in and see where are we at on this issue, where are we at on this progress, and actually just work with each other and not always work against each other all the time in the way it's set up right now.
Hey y'all, my name is Luke Nelson and I'm a 4th year ecology student at the U of A. I'm here to talk a little bit about divestment and the university. The big five banks in Canada are involved in pouring hundreds of millions of dollars every year into fossil fuel expansion in our country. RBC is one of those banks, and the Students' Union, as well as the university, has a very close working relationship with RBC. For me, as a concerned citizen, this is very concerning because the student union budget, which is millions of dollars, as we know, is indirectly helping to go fund those fossil fuel expansion as it's in RBC. So this is a concern, and many other students across the country have brought up this concern to other universities, such as the University of Toronto and the University of Victoria, which have both committed to divesting from the big banks and pulling their money away from fossil fuel expansion. So on this note, what are you going to do, and how are you going to pull away from RBC, divest from fossil fuels, to make our country a greener place? Thank you.
Yeah. No, great question. And I'll admit that it's not as easy as it looks like achieving that in 1 year. This is actually an issue we came across when I was chair of CASA. A member came forward and talked about the fact that we also bank with RBC and it's not sustainable and matches with our value of a green future. And so we looked into different banks and things that we could do to diversify away from fossil fuel. And admittedly, the options that we had were very limited, especially considering we're a small size lobbying association. So the tangible steps we looked into doing currently was investing in green portfolios and money that actually goes towards funding renewable projects, while we can maybe see how our options can guide it in the future. In terms of what that looks like in the Students' Union, I'll have to admit with you right now, I don't know, but I'd love to sit down and work with student groups like yourselves, because we do have a climate policy and we have the advocacy mandate to work towards a green future. So I'd have to, see what are the options there.
Yeah, and for me, more or less, and Luke, we've chatted about this, and I'm sure we'll be chatting about this more. For me, in our platform, we include green jobs for graduates via Climate Corp. I support divestment. I think that for us, as moving into these next few years here, we're obviously going to have to diversify Alberta's economy, and by diversifying Alberta's economy, that also means by ensuring that we're diversifying the programs here at the University of Alberta, because to be frank, oil and gas is at a big boom right now, solely because it's becoming fewer and fewer and fewer. It's going to become constrained. We're going to see a big boom in the next few years in the electrical vehicle industry. By supporting these type of green new jobs through Climate Corp, through a provincial program which will employ thousands of new graduates, especially in engineering, we'll be able to do it. But to be frank, I can make that commitment that I will work with this executive team. I'll work with the Vice President of Operations and Finance to look into divestment, to look into moving our money somewhere else, because we can't be supporting that. I completely agree with you on that. But hopefully I'll have more to say at an annual general meeting.
Hello, my name is Charles Blondin. I'm a third-year political science and economics student. Right now I'm studying part-time. I also work part-time as security. And I've had to apply for emergency loan, so I find it quite disheartening that neither of you have stipulated specific funds for Indigenous students. And that, so basically my question is twofold. Do either of you have anything like concrete plans for supporting Indigenous students financially? And two, you have both mentioned the ISU. Have either of you approached the ISU executive and then given them the opportunity to review your platform and give their 2 cents about it? Have either of you done that?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. So for me, I've had to access the emergency loan. I've had to access the bursaries at the University of Alberta. And to be frank, they, take way too long, except for the emergency loan, which they're always willing to provide because you have to pay it back. But for me, we unfortunately did not consult with them. That was an oversight that I took full responsibility for. We should have reached out, we should have consulted. And as president, I want to set a tone that we will consult, we will work with student organizations to be there and be their backbone, to be their support system. But for me, more or less here is that I think, yes, absolutely, specific funding for Indigenous students, supporting for them is absolutely crucially important. And I feel like that's something they would have told me if I had reached out and met with them. However, for me, more or less, what I want to see is, we want to work with the Registrar's Office and the Provost to speed up the process for obtaining these need-based grants so we can better support students, all students across campus. But I absolutely agree, having specific funding for Indigenous students is crucially important. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charles, for your question. Yeah, I hoped and I should do better to have consulted and set up a time to meet with the rest of the ISU executives, as there was some scheduling issues there. I made the effort to meet with the VP consultation and engagement. But in terms of what we can do for specific funding and emergency loans for Indigenous students, I know I talk about it in my platform, connecting students better with aid and existing aid services. Right now, I don't believe the issue is about processing things faster. The more students we try to get towards applying for financial aid, it's probably still going to overwhelm the system because people need that support. So what I think we can work within that specific aspect of my platform is seeing not just promoting existing services and financial support to students, but how can we also create more financial support awareness to Indigenous students and use that to see where we're lacking in terms of supports and expand and create more funding opportunities and grants and bursaries for Indigenous students on campus.
It's me again. I'm going to read off this just to get the words right. This is a question for candidate Ali. In your Gateway Q&A, you suggested, quote, radical support, unquote, coordinated with the VPX is needed for students' affordability. It's no secret that you're affiliated with the NDP. Can you clarify what specifically you want to achieve with the province and how you will work and negotiate with the province if, in the circumstance that the UCP is re-elected, that you can do this while also maintaining UASU impartiality?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. For me, I agree with you that that's a well-known thing. For me, I plan to resign party memberships. I plan to resign any affiliations with the NDP, obviously, if I'm elected to be student union president. For me, more or less, past presidents have been also involved in NDP campaigns. Rowan Lay is a great example. But obviously, during our term, for me especially, I have absolutely zero plans to be involved in any partisan work. For me, my role, and I plan to make this clear to the government, is my role as a student leader and as president of the Students' Union is to represent 35,000 views. Those views may not agree with me, those views may not support my political views. However, my role as president is to support them. It's the same thing how, how student leaders are free to go to different events, like how Fotang and Dorshide went to the UCP leadership candidates event at Sherlock's. Student leaders are free to do so. However, making it clear that we as president of the Students' Union, this is not a representative of the student union view, is what's crucially important. That's what I want to do. Yeah, thanks so much.
Am I the last one? Yeah. Can I ask two or just one? In the Levi Flamen, no affiliation with either campaign. In the Senate plenary session this morning, we had a presentation from Greg Dooling, President and CEO of the University of Alberta's Properties Trust, who gave an update on the Michener Park and West 240 developments. There was a question from a fellow senator to Dooling regarding what the trust would do to ensure more affordable housing options for our students, as the head lease is essentially being held by the university and the leaseholds being held by the developers. The answer was essentially nothing. Our mandate is to do what makes the university the most money. We will pursue developments based on market demand. If elected and bestowed a seat on the Board of Governors, would you bring forth a motion to BFPC or the board regarding a change in mandate to incorporate more student-specific housing units? And would you advocate for a student representative seat on the Property Trust Board similar to the Simon Fraser University Property Trust?
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Huh?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't get it. No, I didn't hear the question. I couldn't hear. I'm sorry.
If elected and bestowed a seat on the Board of Governors, would you bring forth a motion to BFPC or the board regarding a change in mandate to incorporate more student-specific housing units? And would you advocate for a student representative seat on the Property Trust Board similar to the Simon Fraser University Property Trust?
Absolutely. Well, like Fotang, I can say absolutely. That sounds like a great idea. Having more student voices, having more student-focused housing is absolutely crucially important. It's what's going to be important in these next few years. So, yeah, Levi, that's great. Thank you so much for asking that.
Okay, thank you everyone. And the last part of this will be the Gateway has prepared some questions to ask the candidates. So I'm going to invite members of the Gateway to take over for the little bit, excuse me. As a request from a candidate, and I agree with, I will give a 10-minute recess and then we will come back for the questions from the Gateway. Is that okay? Okay, fantastic. Are you guys okay to take over from here?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's 7:30, so I'm gonna get started. I'll just start with a quick introduction. My name is Emily Williams. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Gateway, which is the official campus newspaper. I had to do a quick Gateway plug. The Gateway is a great place to find lots of information about elections. Earlier this week, we did a bunch of Q&As with each candidate, as well as referendums and plebiscites. I just want to encourage you all to take a look at the great coverage that we're doing at gtwy.ca and follow us on social media to stay in the loop for all of your campus news needs. So for the last half hour of the forum, I will be asking some questions that have been submitted by staff, volunteers, as well as readers, who were able to submit questions through our Instagram story yesterday. We've covered a ton of ground in the last 2.5 hours, so I'm gonna try not to have too much repetition from what happened earlier. That said, you two have been speaking for an hour and a half, so I'll do my best. So, my first question comes from a senior volunteer at the Gateway named Katie O'Connor. It is, how do you plan to advocate for students in the Faculty of Arts who are facing difficulties accessing administrative resources and are suffering from the lack of basic building maintenance due to budget cuts? I'll give you each 2 minutes.
Oh, fun. Yeah, I'm an art student. I've been in a humanities center for the better part of a year now. I've fallen in love with the place during last year, I was able to visit it, but I was a part-time student. This year as a full-time student, I've been really able to experience the humanities. And to be frank, when I look at humanities center, when I go to ETLC, and I compare it to Humanities Center, the difference is night and day, It shouldn't be like that. Our classrooms are not kept clean. The Humanities Center is quite literally falling apart. Torrey's falling apart. I know engineers that come to Torrey and they're like, whoa, what's this place? I don't want to come back. So clearly the government's targeted enrollment plans have resulted in the university investing in certain areas and ignoring other areas. As we saw with the announcement from McEwen about a brand new business building, but we don't see those investments for here at U Alberta for our Humanities Center, even though it's one of the larger faculties here on campus. Now, more than ever, what we need to make sure they're working with OASIS. We need to make sure we're working with art students to advocate. Because if there's one thing I know art students to be very passionate people about whatever they do, whatever discipline they go into, whatever they study, they're passionate people. And they're determined to get what they want. So I think art students want better, and I want to be there to support them. Like I said, empowering student leaders to discover governance through an advocacy office to help aid OASIS in their advocacy, and to be there to be a backbone, to be there to be a back support for them.
Yeah. No, when it comes to funding arts and recognizing arts program and better supporting the arts program, I think where we can start off is this government's, hopefully, with this current government, if they stay, making them change their tune on how they view the arts. Right now, they're focusing a lot of their investments, whether it's work-integrated learning opportunities, whether it's infrastructure, update and maintenance, towards the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So working with other folks across the province, CAUSE, ASEC, everyone else to actually show that the arts has value and will continue to have value, especially considering that you see things like The Last of Us being filmed here in Alberta. These are evidence of arts promoting Albertan culture, promoting Alberta economy and Alberta investment. So that's one avenue with the government. When it comes to the university, working with the Board of Governors, working with the Vice President, Facilities and Operation, so that when the university is submitting its budget proposal or capital infrastructure proposal, arts supports are the first thing on the budget. If humanities is going through an existential threat right now, the building that is, and there isn't going to be enough supports, I think what the university needs to do is create a detailed plan of what it does intend to do to create a new home for humanities and art students on our campus right now. If there's going to be huge infrastructure or deferred maintenance issues that are going to cost more to fix and it's just cheaper to replace and build a much nicer building, let's pursue those efforts. Let's actually put the same energy into lobbying for better arts funding and better arts buildings the same way we do for STEM.
Okay, thank you so much. My next question comes from our news editor, Lily Polenchuk. You've talked about improving the UASU granting process for student groups. I'm curious to hear more about this in relation to the Sustainability and Capital Fund, particularly considering the low number of applications and the struggles the committee has had meeting consistently. What would you do to address this and promote meaningful sustainability projects on campus? 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah, so when it comes to Sustainability and Capital Fund, there were a lot of issues this year that cannot repeat next year, especially considering how much of students' money that is. We have to get the seats in Sustainability and Capital Fund filled ASAP, even before the new term starts for the new council and the new executive. We also have to better promote it to students, to student groups, to student associations, faculty associations, department associations, to spread the word to students that this is a grant that they can access to improve their campus community. In terms of other aspects of the student granting process, I think working with the SU department, working with student groups, looking to see what other SUs are doing so we can tailor solutions to our SU so that if the chess club, for example, wants to apply for grants to get more chessboards, they don't need to be going through a 12-page document just to get that money. I know we have to balance financial accountability with improving supports for students, but there are other ways that we can improve the system. So when it comes to SCFC, better control and better organization of the committee, better promotion, but also better promotion of the students who have received a fund, recognizing that when you get that money and you use it to expand your project, we need to help showcase your project to other people who can help grow your business. It shouldn't just start and end at getting a grant, it should be continued support.
When I was chair of NOMCOM committee, one of the things that we were trying to do is fill all student seats, which we were successful in, especially when it comes to Sustainability and Capital Fund committee. I believe that we were able to, don't quote me on that, but I believe we were able to fill most student seats. However, what my concern here was when the Vice President of Operations and Finance continually made it seem like we were holding up thousands of dollars, even though no grants have been given out to at this point from my knowledge. I may be wrong. However, more or less now for sustainability on campus, what we need to do, I agree, Fotang, I think we need to promote the presence of these grants that are available to help support student groups, that are available to help streamline. We need to make the process easier, because what we need to recognize here is that students want to be students. Our job as student leaders are there to help support them and advocate for them.
Thank you both for that answer. On a similar note of financial accountability, another question submitted by our volunteer, Katie O'Connor. Currently, the audited financial statements for the 2021-2022 year are not available to students on the SU website. And the reports that are available are relatively inaccessible to students who are not well versed in finance and budgeting. What steps do you plan to take towards increasing accessibility and transparency regarding SU spending? And we'll start with candidate Ali this time.
I remember last year running for student union president, trying to figure out how our finances worked. And to me, it looked like our finances were a little bit of a mess to the average student. However, there's so much in-depth knowledge, and as on finance committee, we're able to get this in-depth knowledge and request these files. After the executive team spent $150,000 on dodgeball, we, as a finance committee and as a group of counselors, we came together and we pushed and we lobbied for the executive team to make changes to how we do it. Milan was very successful in his advocacy of getting tuition consultation done, but one of the things I want to take away from the AMS, and I really applaud them for, is quarterly reports on the state of our finances. Because students should be able to see where we're spending money, how much money we're spending, and the executive committee, I want to create on this quarterly report a section for the executive committee about where we're spending money, what we're doing, our activities, so students can hold us accountable. But more or less here too, what we need to do, we need to rebuild our trust with students, especially after Break the Record, because to be frank, it was completely, I support student initiatives to build campus community, but I can't support a $150,000 investment at a time when the campus food bank was publicly fundraising for money. It's tone deaf, to be frank, but yeah.
Candidate Fotang, go ahead.
So in my platform, I outline my goal to make sure that the UASU website is updated, hopefully by the end of this summer and ready for the new school year in 2023-2024. I know this has been something that's been pushed by previous executives, but we really seriously need to make this a priority, because if we want to engage better with students, if we want to be accountable to students, if we actually want to provide students the information so that they can use to better consult with us to hold us accountable, it starts with updating our website and actually making it easy to navigate. So my goal there is that once we update the website, make it easy and transparent to locate where our budget is. There have been measures put in place to make sure that we're financially transparent to students, but also within the annual meeting of members idea, I think that's also an opportunity for the future VP Operations and Finance to present where we are with our budget, ask questions to students about where do you like to see our spending priorities done, and then see how we can use that to better improve how we organize our businesses, how we organize our services, and how we fund certain issues and projects.
Fantastic. Thank you both. This next question was submitted by our opinion editor, Katie Teeling. Both of you talk about improving access to mental health support on campus in your platforms. How will you advocate for students who may not be able to access traditional in-person therapy? What changes will you make to ensure that there is accessibility to these supports? And we'll start with candidate Fotang this time.
Oh, Chiwan.
Yeah, absolutely. I can repeat it. Both of you talk about improving access to mental health support on campus in your platforms. How will you advocate for students who may not be able to access traditional in-person therapy? What changes will you make to ensure that there is accessibility to these supports?
Thank you. Something I mentioned in my platform is creating more dedicated spaces to take virtual therapy on our campus. Right now, we've seen that ever since the pandemic, virtual therapy options have grown as an option for a lot of students, whether it's that they have bad Wi-Fi at home, whether it's because they have a family member who might be the cause of concern for their mental health appointment. If we can provide students the option where they can go to a room on campus that's safe, that's comfortable, and that they can take their assessment from, that's going to be really key. The issue is that we've been working with this on the university right now, and they proposed a solution that was going to be a pilot program, that was going to be a booth, but the issue with that is it's not accessible to many students, so whatever solution we're going to provide has to be accessible. I know that perfect cannot be the enemy of the good sometimes, but in this instance, when we're talking about mental health and we're talking about students' anxiety, we have to make sure that any idea we're putting out there works for all students.
For me, one of the bigger things for me, especially as a resident assistant, and being one of the direct lines for students who have mental health concerns and being check-ins, is I agree with Fotang that accessibility is crucially important. That's one of the reasons for me too. Throughout this year, it's been a stressful year for me personally. I've accessed the peer support center multiple times, which is why I was super disappointed when they had to cut their hours in January, because it reduces the accessibility of it. The other problem here too is that, once again, more or less, is that when we run these type of services as volunteer ones, rather than opposed to paying students for to be frank, taking trauma on, it results in a lack of, it makes it harder for students to be able to access support, which is one of the reasons, which is why when I talk about us being a union, not a business, I mean that we need to stop relying on the labor of students, especially we need to stop relying on solely the labor of volunteers to do the grit work. We also need to work on being sure that we're paying people appropriately for their efforts, that we're paying people to do their work, you know what I mean? And by empowering people to take steps that they need. For me, what that looks like is having accessible mental health supports available for everyone on campus that can access, whether that be culturally specific ones, but also breaking down stigmas. Because for me, a lot of students have talked to me about the stigma around mental health and getting that support that you need. So by breaking those down as a union, I think we're able to empower students to take and look after their mental health.
Okay, thank you so much. This next question also comes from our opinion editor, Katie Teeling, and it was written as a question for candidate Ali, but I think it would be great to hear from Fotang as well. So, candidate Ali, in your platform, you talk about advocating for mandatory Indigenous studies courses, but in this past year, the current VPA, Gerline Carr, and Dr. Florence Glanfield, who's the Vice Provost of Indigenous Programming and Research, have advocated for a switch to mandatory Indigenous course content instead. Can you explain why you're opting for mandatory Indigenous courses?
For me, this is something I chatted with, I met with Indigenous students on, and we had conversations on about this. More or less now, what I think students want to see, especially Indigenous students, is knowledge. For me, as a resident leader, what I've seen is I've seen international students that sometimes are not aware of what's called Indigenous student issues on campus, and that lack of knowledge can be gapped by having an Indigenous mandatory Indigenous studies course, similar to language requirement, similar to other mandatory courses on campus. This is going to add, and this is going to help long-term our society. I think by ensuring that we're educating people that come to college with this knowledge and equipping them with the knowledge to be able to address these and be able to have this perspective in mind, I think we'll be able to build a better society. It's a small step. I'm willing, at the end of the day, my clear thing here is I was not able to consult with the Indigenous Students Union. What they say goes. Our role as student leaders, and especially for me as president, is not to assert what we're going to do. It is to follow the lead of Indigenous students. It is to follow the lead of elders. It's to follow the lead of them.
Fantastic. And candidate Fotang, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that, looking at the mandatory Indigenous course content, I think that's a more flexible option to work with faculty so that they can design their courses in a way that makes Indigenous learning approachable to students in different faculties. Another thing that it provides an opportunity for is the opportunity for land-based learning. I know that if you're students in law, they often will go out to Enoch Cree where they have an opportunity to learn about the land that they work on. So looking at that for other programs such as the sciences with ecology or with any other program, I think that can open up an avenue for more indigenization of our course content, more indigenization of our campus as well.
Awesome, thank you so much. So this next question was written by myself, and I think we've touched on it already in this forum, but I think there's more that could be said. Low engagement in student council this year has been a hot topic. The number of vacancies paired with multiple resignations is a concern. There have been various proposed solutions, like a council honorarium or reducing the number of seats that council is made up of. As the figurehead of the Students' Union, how will you, if elected, try to meaningfully increase engagement in governance? And I think it's candidate Fotang's turn to start.
Yeah, I think this has got to be something that I recognize as if I'm elected president that I held that headwell to create that culture, but it really has to be co-created with council. I think part of what we often see in council is that there's an information sharing disconnect between the executive and councilors, and that's why we often see the councilors feel out of the loop, and then if they feel out of the loop, they don't feel like they have any ownership or dedication towards the things that they can do in council. So at the same time, I think by creating more information sharing between councilors, we can provide a network or a framework for more work to be done. But as I talked about before, creating that council action plan. And in that council action plan, if we want to make engagement a huge priority, what are the tangible steps that we are going to do throughout the year and throughout the different periods of council to be involved with students? When I was a science counselor in my first term on council, something I did was try to create the science caucus. And what we would do is do frequent check-ins with the ICE faculty associations, ask them where they need support, what issues that we can bring to them for council. So I think there's many ways of approaching this, but I don't want to dictate it. I think it's going to take teamwork and working with other councilors and other executives to see how we can get there. But what I believe we can do immediately is fix the culture, make council an approachable space, make it a welcoming space, empower voices that don't often speak to speak up and share their concerns and take lead on different initiatives so it's not just the same people speaking all the time.
When I ran for Students' Council, after losing, one of the things that I expected from us was a union, not a business. And I cited that in my letter, was that we don't act like a union. More or less what we act like here is to be frank, the infighting, the bureaucracy, just the combativeness of some folks in the Students' Union made it hard to pass simple motions. But what I was always shocked about was, for example, my motion regarding the financial management assessment, which passed with ease, only later to be killed by Finance Committee. More or less here, what I'm saying is that students have lost faith in the Students' Union, largely because of, to be frank, we could do a better job of engaging with students, but it's bigger than that. We have reputational damage that has been instilled by executive team after executive team after executive team. What we need to do now more than ever is look within the students' union and be like, how can we do better? And look to students too, because at the end of the day, students are the ones that are paying the membership fees. As I've been doing class talks, and something I've been repeatedly saying is that you are investing in this union, but my question is this union investing in you? Are you seeing a return on that investment? And how can we do a better job? I think there's a lot of things we can do better in, and that's what my platform covers and touches on.
Okay, thank you both. That was actually our last question, so I'll pass the mic back to Matt. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, everyone. That is the conclusion of this debate. I want to thank candidates Ali and candidate Fotang for joining us, and I want to thank all of you for being here with us tonight. Thank you to the Gateway for preparing those questions. And yeah, vote March 8th and 9th. And that's all. Thank you and have a great night.